and welcome to the Drive at 5 on IntellectualRadio.com/iHeartRadio station. I'm your host. We have a great show planned for you today. After the Drive at 5, stay tuned for Warriors Talk with my girl, Royale. Tonight, we have a special guest for you, the executive director of South Shore Works. This weekend from June 14th to June 23rd, we will be celebrating Black Culture Week, dedicated to celebrating Black culture and wellness. Here is the director, live in the flesh, is executive director of South Shore Works, Tudros Joseph Abiyayi. Correct?
That's close. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Joseph Abioye.
Abioye. Okay, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Well,
so
welcome.
Known as TJ Crawford, but the Tudros Joseph is the Yoruba Ethiopian versions of my birth name, and Abioye is my chosen last name, which means child of royalty.
All right, thank you. So please give IntellectualRadio.com/iHeartRadio station your background.
My background, native Chicagoan, born and raised, super proud of it. Hip hop generation, organizer, social entrepreneur, theorist, clinical social worker, created a concept called Black Culture Wellness, which is an evolution of the organizing work that I've been doing as a part and member of the hip hop, or I should say card carrying member of the hip hop community and purveyor of authentic hip hop culture. For me, hip hop is a amalgamation of a whole bunch of musical and artistic expression. When you dig into it, you know, it just really evolves as Black culture in all of its varied formats. So Black culture wellness for me was built off of that work. When that work, in the past, I was a co-founder of the National Hip Hop Political Convention. I founded the Hip Hop Political Action Committee. I launched Rolling Out Urban Style Weekly here in Chicago. I founded Chicago Votes. I've done a lot. I don't want to run my whole resume, but I've done a lot, and all of it is really combined cultural practice, cultural expression, artistic expression, community organizing, social entrepreneurship, and media in a format that now has me doing what I'm doing as the executive director of South Shore Works, utilizing the theory of transformation called Black Culture Wellness to build systems and engage and facilitate collaboration around stakeholders, specifically nonprofit institutions in the neighborhood, in a way to improve the quality of life for all residents of South Shore and the surrounding communities.
Explain the mission of your organization, South Shore Works.
South Shore Works envisions a culturally centered, overall healthy and well neighborhood that has all of the elements that are required for healthy living for families, individuals, businesses, service providers, etc. Our mission as an organization is to facilitate collaboration amongst community stakeholders and institutions in particular, service providers, those who really ground the neighborhood and ensure that it has all that it needs. We are supposed to facilitate cooperation and collaboration amongst those organizations in a way that improves the life of the residents of South Shore.
Can you explain the activities planned throughout Black Culture and Wellness Week from June 14th to the 23rd?
Yeah, no doubt. So Black Culture Week is a demonstration project that is created to model the concept of Black culture wellness. Black culture wellness states that the unique, authentic expression of the values and principles self-determined by the Black community will lend to the long-term health, wealth, and well-being of the Black community. The theme of Black Culture Week is celebrate, commemorate, and collaborate. How do we celebrate Black people and the culture that we've created? How do we commemorate the Black community through tradition and ritual? And then how do we collaborate to make new contributions to the culture? So from June 14th to the 23rd, we are centering community around that concept, around the expression of authentic Black culture in a way where we celebrate ourselves, we start to improve our self-efficacy, kind of telling the history of who we are, standing really rooted and grounded in the gifts and the divineness, the spirituality of what and who we are as a people and the culture and the expressions that we've created, and then really connecting with folks instead of arguing over, small things that normally separate us. We just want to celebrate us and love on us for who we are and the things that we've done. So we've got 10 days of events. Our particular events start with the kickoff to Black Culture Week at the Supper Club at 55 East Garfield Garfield Boulevard. And then on Saturday, we've got a mini wellness fest at Don Nash Fitness Center in South Shore. That evening, we'll be present rather at the We Day concert with Rakim. The following day, we'll be with Real Men Cook for Father's Day celebration at the Quarry in South Shore. On Monday, we'll be downtown with the mayor's office and the Chicago Juneteenth Planning Coalition doing a flag raising ceremony. That day also begins a 4-day, movie series that'll be at Sisters in Cinema, which is also located in the South Shore community. On Wednesday, we have a sunrise celebration at Rainbow Beach. We will then follow that up with the Fireworks Fest, where we're celebrating people doing firework in the community. We're trying to work through some of the things we got to work through with that, but that is also planned for Rainbow Beach. That Thursday, we'll be recognizing the summer solstice, just gathering as residents at the South Shore Cultural Center at about 3:15. Understanding what the solstice is in community, I could talk about that a little bit later. On Friday, we'll be doing a spoken word event at the Urban Lux Cafe. On Saturday, it's escaping me what we're doing on Saturday, but on Sunday, we'll be having a worship service at St. Benedict the African in South Shore as well. And that's kind of wrapping up all of the activities that we're doing officially, but we're also celebrating and promoting all of the wonderful Juneteenth activities that are happening around the city and in the greater Chicagoland area.
What inspired you to create Black Culture and Wellness Week?
So Black Culture Week was really centered around two things. One, probably about 6 to 7 years ago, we were dealing with violence in community as we normally do. And I asked some friends to join me on a call to kind of hash out and hash through some ideas that we thought would be able to address violence, understanding that violence is a symptom of a larger dis-ease that individuals and communities are experiencing. So after some conversation, we settled on, and I probably should say that I listened and I heard and I took notes. And after reviewing the notes, what came about or what showed itself was, what do we believe in, right? What are the values and principles that guide our behavior, that we project and protect in community, and everything that comes out of that, right? So anything that you see is an expression in community, not just violence, but what is it that you're building? How is the community designed? What's the architecture like? What are the schools like? What's the policy that's going on? How much money are people making? How do we engage one another? All of that really pointed to culture, which is the wraparound phrase or the overarching phrase for all of those varying expressions. At the time, I was also in school getting my master's in social work, so I'm a clinical social worker. And I was doing all of this research around clinical approaches and methodologies and modalities that are used to be able to help individuals and families, which families are smaller systems, heal and operate in an optimum level. So I looked at all of the different evidence-based practices and saw that if you can bind a certain amount of those that seem to work, then you can expand the efficacy and the effectiveness of this programming. Then, of course, I linked with others to really do a deeper dive into the research around, and not like research academically, just looking back at who we are and who we've been as a people, combined with book knowledge to see what were the values that sustain the Black community over the years. What are the principles that we've self-determined for ourselves that drive how we interact in the direction in which we go in, versus what are the messages and the kind of tropes that are put out there by other people that we get rewarded for when we act those things out, and where we get disciplined or punished for when we act as our authentic selves. And what is the outcome of those tropes? What is the outcome of the definitions of who we are that are placed upon us versus what are the outcome of the definitions that we determine for ourselves. And you can clearly see that in the long term and the midterm, when we define who we are and act on the things that make the most sense for ourselves, that's when we achieve optimum health. That's when we achieve optimum well-being. So if we want to solve violence and any other dis-ease in community, and this can go into, violence is a public health issue, but any physical or mental health issue, the thing that allows us to heal from that and to sustain environments that are healthy for us, first is based on, do we believe that we have value? Are the values and principles that we choose, are they expressed in our music, in our media, in our policy, in our commerce, right? And do we believe that we can then control an environment? Can we impact an environment in a way where we create that which we need to be healthy?
But don't you think right here, right now, 2024, you have decades and decades. You mentioned hip hop earlier. And to me, hip hop was, and yes, I'm using past tense, was our culture. Now it's just, in my opinion, gibbly-gook, garbage. It doesn't express the realities. People who's talking about what's going on in the streets are not from the streets. So my question is, what, as a hip hop fan and the culture, do you really think the message is just not there anymore in our culture?
So the message is always there. How do I know it's there? Because we're still living and breathing. I break it down to some basic things. Like, there are things that promote life. There's some things that lead to death. There's an imbalance that will make you experience a dis-ease. There's a balance that will allow you to experience optimum health. And they're constantly at war with one another based on the environment that we find ourselves in, and also the things in which we intake and the things that we then put out into the world. I think that, one, you can't paint anything with a broad brush, because I can send you 100 different songs and images that will be considered hip hop that communicate in the ways that we found culturally supportive or grounded in spirituality or a culture that promotes life, similar to what we heard in the late 80s, early 90s, or even going into the early 70s. The problem is that you don't hear that, right? You don't hear that in the public airwaves. Why don't you hear that in the public airwaves? Because there's somebody making decisions, or somebody's making decisions that are not grounded in who we are authentically in the public space. So we could talk about traditional radio.
But the question,
whatever.
however, there is a question of, how can we hold those people accountable? How can we hold, and I'm just going to say it, the GCIs, the Power 92s, accountable for playing this type of stuff on the airwaves?
So it's funny, but if you look at the laws that govern public airwaves, and if you look at the FCC and what they say is acceptable to be played on radio, you will see that they self-define messages that are supportive or promote community, right? We are not, I won't say we, there has not been a successful lobby to hold those, I guess, terrestrial radio stations, is what you would call them, to hold them accountable to the messages that they play on radio. Secondly, those airwaves make all their money based off of advertisement. So it's kind of like, you can protest with both your dollar and your vote. If you're protesting with your vote, that then needs to translate into policy. If you're protesting with your dollar, then where do you direct those dollars to? And do we have an organized group, right, that is going to consistently hold folks accountable, corporate and community, to the messages that we can see have impact on children, families on an everyday basis. So more than anything, we have to be consistent and organized and cooperative and collaborative with those of us who have similar mindset if we intend to see images change. But not just that, we also have to promote and create the images and the messages that we need for ourselves and distribute them on a mass level, which is really the reason behind Black Culture Wellness and Black Culture Week, right? For a week at least, how do we model what it looks like to celebrate us as our authentic selves, right? In the midst of all of the craziness, can we push through a message that promotes us as our best us versus the version of us that is defined by things that you read about in the late 1800s and 1900s? It's very interesting that what we would define as Black culture now are the things that you found in racist or white supremacist books describing who we were, but was a total lie.
But don't you think
later,
right now, as we speak, we're letting other ethnicities to define us? And the reason that I'm saying that is because what you hear on the airwaves, what you see on television, especially on reality television, when you talk about Black culture and or Blackisms, so to speak, it's not us. This is
no, it's
what,
not.
however, you say how to address the issue. Well, number one, why we're not going after uh, other media outlets that owns the rights to reality television, why we're not going after the music stations, and the list goes on and on. And sometimes we have to go after stock options, and that's a way to curve the message. If you're not going to listen to us, well, we're going to buy into your stock, and then we're going to have a place at this table. So you cannot curse or degrade our women. You cannot say anything about our community. And
Jackson and the Rainbow Coalition did that for a long time. That was part of their strategy of buying stocks or going to the board meetings of corporations and saying that, hey, one, I'm a consumer, so your board meeting is open. I can be here. I can express. Two, I've purchased stock in your company, so now I want to have an influence over how you message and what it is that you do. And that had a modicum of success, right? And I say a modicum because Rainbow Push at one time was looked at as one of the most powerful entities and even a watchdog entity in the Black community in America as a whole. Why has Rainbow Push no longer have that same type of esteem outside of what leadership has done, right? And outside of the Reverend aging, outside of anything of our own control, why do we not have, and are we not seeing success from that same type of strategy that you're talking about?
is that rhetorical or?
No, it's a real question because you made the suggestion that, and we're dialoguing here, so just be clear,
Okay.
it's all love.
Well, that's a question I cannot answer. That's a question that only Rainbow Push can answer. And the reason why I'm saying that is because yes, that happened once upon a time. The question is why it stopped. I don't have that answer.
I can give you.
The focus should be how can we start it up again?
So this is how you start it up again.
Okay.
This is how you start it up again. Because you gotta, at least for me, I have to acknowledge the full-on assault on authentic Blackness in this country and abroad. Anytime a Black person has stepped outside of the norm to affirm themselves, right? Self-determination, who we are as a people, divinity, all of that, it moves against a system that inherently positions us as lesser than. So everything in that system then works against us. So for example, in our community, majority Black communities, specifically ones that are in poverty or at medium income level, you find certain types of food, right? That food impacts the way that you think. It impacts the way that you act. It will minimize the energy that you have in your cognitive processes to be able to break down complex situations, or it can enhance your cognitive process and your ability to break down complex situations. The trauma that we experience through systematic racism, not just through the police department, but in education systems, in healthcare systems, in economic systems, that trauma is then embedded in who we are genetically as well as cell-wise. And that then makes us overreactive. It makes us combatants. We have the fight, flight, or freeze phenomena. And there are a number of other things that we can speak to that inhibits our ability to, one, work together, two, be able to properly identify phenomena, meaning things that are happening in the world, and seeing, are they really against me? Are they for me? Are they neutral? And then being able to put forth and implement a strategy on a long-term basis that will allow us to realize something that works for us and not just for them. Three, messaging, behavior, imaging, like the science behind what you listen to and what you see, and how that impacts what you think and believe about yourself and others. Part of the reason why we see so much messaging, I think, is because it reinforces the thought process that has us act in ways where we are defined by other cultures, just as you said. And it isn't so much about other cultures. I think I don't like throwing out, popular phrases, but when you talk about white supremacy, meaning that white is superior and everything else is inferior, it is real, right? It comes about, and people have adopted that themselves. If you look at what in The Fire Next Time, and the author James Baldwin, what he would say that there are so many things that are thrown at Black people in so many different ways that it's hard to believe that you even have value. It's hard to believe that you can even operate in the world as it is, because you're constantly bombarded, not just with messages, but with realities that are boxing you in, that are penalizing you for stepping outside of what the defined trope is. So if you ain't a shuffling, jiving, criminal-minded type of Negro, right? You, one, become an exceptional Negro if you do something different, and you have your own type of separation from community. Meaning, if I'm an exceptional guy, I've been to school, I did whatever, I'm making good money, I often am encouraged and then celebrated when I move out of the neighborhood versus investing in the neighborhood. And that's not something that comes from us. That's something that comes from those outside of us. But the messaging is so consistent. The messaging is so overwhelming. The celebration of those who do follow that mode of operation and move out versus the condemnation of those, the literal killing and the assassination of those who move against the grain. And we could talk about banking, we could talk about segregated housing, we could talk about redlining. There's so many different examples of how various things are weaponized against our personhood, against who we are as humans. And that is the reason I believe that we find ourselves in the conditions that we are. So we have to be able to congeal in a different way, not where we are against anyone else, but where we are looking for our optimum health and well-being. And that means that we first have to have a common, maybe I should say, have an internal appreciation and the celebration for all that we are, all that we've done, all that we continue to be, that is healthy and well, versus anything else. And then let that understanding and that connection and that energy connect with others around us so that we can build community.
What message do you want to convey to the Black community during Black Culture and Wellness Week, especially as we celebrate Juneteenth?
Well, the reason that Black Culture Week takes place at the time that it does is because we started to organize in order to make Juneteenth a national holiday. At the, not just a national holiday, but also at the state level, at the county level, and at the city level. And the reason it was important to make Juneteenth a holiday is because, again, how do we celebrate the best of us? How do we remind us, right? The themes of Black Culture Week: celebrate Black people and the culture that we created, commemorate that culture and that people through ritual and tradition, by lifting up Juneteenth every year and all of the things that are associated with that: freedom, emancipation, family. Like, there's a whole bunch of things that are integral to who we are that move beyond slavery. Really, it speaks to our resilience. It speaks to our creative nature. It speaks to our ability to both struggle and overcome, right? Those are the things, and that is the message that we promote and push in Black Culture Week, which is intentionally centered around Juneteenth. And my friends with the Chicago Juneteenth Planning Coalition that I'm a part of, we were successful, and we take a lot of pride in the organizing work that we did to help make Juneteenth a holiday at all of those levels. And it was already a holiday to us before any of that. But to have it be institutionalized at all of those levels of government signifies to folks that this is important. Let's pay attention. And it also gives opportunity for folks to engage. You're off work. Let's engage in a way that promotes who we are and that pushes our well-being.
When you look at this, and we discussed this before, how can we redefine our perception of Blackness, moving away from negative connotation and embarking the Black is beautiful message that we are missing now? How can we redefine that?
Well, first, I don't buy into the fact that we have any other definition, right?
Well, don't you think that's the problem?
Yes. And so, yes, short answer is yes. I think that definition is one that is put upon us and is constantly reinforced by the images and the messages that we see. So how do we redefine it? I guess first, those of us who understand who we really are have to model and demonstrate just that. This is who we are in real time. This is who we've always been. This is who we're going to be. Not accepting the tropes and the messages and the habits and the values that are being put upon us. That means, and in order to do that, not only do you have to be in community with other folks, but you want to begin. So clinical social worker status, right? Man, I'm messed up. I got some issues. I'm depressed. I'm anxious. Sit down on my couch. Let's talk about it. I don't sit down on the couch and talk about it first. The first thing I do is just get to moving around. I get to get the energy in the body flowing, get the blood moving to the brain, get the oxygen in the blood, getting to where it needs to go to. Because if I just start operating and moving as God has designed me to be, it'll push away the anxiety. It'll push away the depression. It'll allow me to focus in. It will increase my emotional intelligence. It'll increase the well-functioning of everything in my body. That will then allow me to not just remove those clouds that are internal to me, but it'll allow me to start to remove those clouds that are external to me. So we have to exercise our demons. We have to start moving well. We have to start living well, right? Then we have to start looking at what it is that we intake. This goes to a systemic piece because, again, the thing that makes us move by definitions which harm us is that we oftentimes find no alternative that is appealing to us and that is consistently available to us that will reinforce that which is beneficial to us. So when we identify individuals and institutions that push that message, we need to support them and amplify their message in a way where it can compete with everything that's coming externally. Being neighbors, living next to each other, having direct face-to-face conversation with as many people as possible does a lot to combat messages coming externally. Because once you build up your belief in yourself, once you get to moving and you're operating in a healthy way, it's like your immune system, right? When you have a weakened immune system, the things that you are bringing into your body or environments in which you find yourself in can actually create disease. But when you have a strong immune system, when you have a healthy sense of self, when you have a healthy belief in your ability to alter the environment in a way that benefits you, when you have a healthy sense of my ability to protect and take care of my family, that then pushes back against in ways that are not criminal also, right? That then pushes back against everything that comes in. Now I got a healthy immune system, I'm pushing back. There's a symbol of the devil in health. And they got the man holding the staff of medicine, and he's pushing back against the devil, the dis-ease that is coming against him. Once we can get a healthy sense of self, healthy operation within our body, healthy intake of both food and media and otherwise, then we'll begin to see the change. But it starts first, do I believe, one, that I have value, and two, that I have the capacity to change, inform, or control my environment.
In today's society, what's defining message should Black culture convey to identify and celebrate our heritage?
So the definition of Black cultural wellness is the unique, authentic expression of the values and principles self-determined by the Black community will lend to the long-term health, wealth, and well-being of the Black community. Expressions are both music, media, food, clothing, policy, security, structure, institutions, architecture. All of these things express particular values and principles. So for Black cultural wellness, the values are faith or spirit, family, freedom, ingenuity, self-sustenance, hard work, and resilience. Do the messages that we communicate, are they built on that foundation? Then I see you in your kente cloth. We're looking at Nguzu Saba, right? The 7 principles of Kwanzaa plus respect, right? So are you doing collective work and responsibility? Do you have faith? Is there self-determination? Are we moving with purpose, right? Do we respect ourselves in what we do? Those are the things. So for me, principles are values in motion. When we put those 2 things together and then couple it with the evidence-based practices that prove to, I guess, move people towards optimum living, right? So nutritional psychology. Are we eating the foods that impact our mind? And I'll be quiet because I see you wanted to say something. But those are the things and the messages that need to be conveyed. Like in real talk, brother, when you look at that, when you do the research on who we've been, when we were our best selves in this country and abroad, when we were our best selves as we created culture all over the world, when we created science and mathematics and all those things all over the world, you'll see those common traits, those common values, those common principles. And we need to hold on to that.
That's the problem right there. That's the problem right there. It's once upon a time, the Black culture, the Black experience had this. And for some odd reason, it went away. We can say it's oppression. We can say it's due to the lack, and you just go down the list. However, how can we reinvent the wheel? We used to have Black banks. Now you can count on one hand, maybe 2. We used to have the type of, let's say, Black schools. Remember, the Black Panthers said, we're gonna do it ourselves. We don't need the government. We'll do it ourselves. And then when you look further, they use government funds to fund it themselves. So what my question is, it's not like we haven't been there and done that. The problem is that, are we in a state of Black leadership that has become lackadaisical, that doesn't define Black leadership as a whole? Now, let me further this, because there are, I would say, 4 styles of Black leadership thinking. There is the thought process. There is the Black slavery thought process. There is the Emancipation Proclamation thought process. There is the Black Panther thought process. And there is the so-called current Black leadership, meaning that we're going to negotiate. We're going to try and do our best to get this done. And if so, then we're going to just accept what we're going to get. Prime example, the John Lewis bill. And soon as it failed. Well, we tried. We just have to wait until this. Why Black leadership tells the Black community to hold on for a minute. Let's wait and see. And then nothing comes out of it. And there you have no banks, no resources. Your thoughts?
Again, I gotta put the question towards you. Why do you think there is such a dearth of Black banks, Black insurance companies, Black-owned corporations, all of the things that would lend towards a healthy, self-sustainable Black community?
Well, And I will say that some people would say lack of Black investment, lack of Black awareness. There are some people, I'll give you a prime example. Um, Last month, a lot of people, including myself, we didn't know it was Haitian Awareness Month until it was a resolution. I think our culture has been fading away. And my question goes back to you. Do you believe that Black culture is fading away? And if so, why do you think that is happening? Including the impact of societal attitudes and behavior of what's going on. Because we sit there and we say, hey, um, we need this. We need a Black bank. But however, they're a small number of it. We need this, but there's a small number. So my question is, how can we get back to bringing back the Black banks, bringing back the Black resources in our community?
It's a complex concept, but it's really simple as well. Jacob Carruthers wrote a number of different books. And the Center for Inner City Studies, the Jacob Carruthers Center for Inner City Studies down in Bronzeville, speaks to, or should I say Dr. Jacob Carruthers spoke to a concept called the inner city. And it wasn't so much that the inner city and the realities of the inner city were contained in what we know as the physical inner city, but wherever you find Black folks, there were conditions that he described as the inner city. And you could find this in urban areas, rural areas, and suburban areas, where, long story short, there's a squeezing and a holding back of resource and a pumping in of ideology that moves against our natural selves. And the reason for that is that systems are based around a center. And he talked about worldviews. He talked about a European worldview, an Asian worldview, and an African worldview. And we currently operate and live in a system that operates from a European worldview, which has white males at the center, white family and white, health and well-being at the center. And everything else is at the edges of that, with Black folks being at the extreme edge if they are even in the circle itself. So when you operate in this system, it is set up and designed in a way to celebrate everything that goes along with and that echoes and that supports the definitions and the operations of what's at the center. And it is designed to attack that which lies at the edges or tries to create another center. Why? Because the system needs to be able to operate and serve what it was intended to serve, right? So how do we, one, learn how to navigate this system and this center in a way where we are kind of insulated from the consistent attack on us and who we are? And again, I can run through all the systems. Secondly, how do you build a center? Everything, like, America is a melting pot. So we say that, everybody should be able to come in and be celebrated and do their thing. When you melt something, you break it down to its simplest format and then start to have it be subsumed by everything else. And depending upon the container that it's held in, it starts to take the shape and form of the container that it's in. That's what a melting pot does. Instead of celebrating you and saying, hey, come as your whole self and be a part of this, we're going to break you down, melt you down. And they do this in the army. They do this in any system, right? They break you down so that they could then give you what it is that they want to see, and then have you be a good soldier that follows the mission and the vision of whatever that system is set up to be. So we have been
Demilitarized
by our,
Do you think what you're saying is the Black culture has been demilitarized. That's what you're saying. And then it is just been demilitarized, because if you're in the army, they demilitarize you, and they then at a certain point they build you back up. The problem is they demilitarized us, but they never built us back up.
I would say that when you hear or use the term demilitarize, it speaks to, hold on, and I got to call you right back. I'm in the middle of an interview, but I will call you right back. It speaks to, I guess, the breaking down of a person's personhood and the beliefs that they have about themselves and where they come from and where they're going, and shows you what supposedly is a better way to exist that has you living in concert with whatever the system is. So do I think that I wouldn't use the word demilitarized, and not saying that there's anything wrong with using that word. But I definitely think that the authenticity of Black culture has been watered down and negatively impacted, because a lot of what we see and do today are not things that we choose for ourselves. They are reflections and reactions to the circumstances in which we find ourselves subjected to, or that sometimes we have willingly walked into ourselves, but just have not been as prepared as we need to be to come out on the other side better. Like it's a war going on outside, right? Like it's real, and it's at everywhere in every space that you turn. And sometimes, if not oftentimes, it becomes exhausting. So it's easier to, instead of swimming upstream, you go with the flow versus figuring out how to get to the shore, getting out of the stream altogether and creating something new and something different. The hard part and the thing to recognize is that this is not unique to Black folks. Like really, we need to start looking at capitalism and commercialism, because it takes away your individuality and has you want to move in a mass mindset, right? So if I can make you a consumer, which means that I need other things outside of me to feel good about me, versus looking internally for the things that are inside of me that are actually good for me. If I got to keep looking externally for validation, externally for self-sustenance, externally for security and protection, then I no longer rely on me. I doubt me, and I rely on you or whatever that thing is for everything. And that goes for Black folks, that goes for brown folks, that goes for pink folks, that goes for white folks, right? And the more traumatic experiences that we have, the more struggle that we endure, the more loss that we have, it makes it that much harder for folks to stand on, with, I guess in this today, to stand on business, because the business keep changing, right? The foundation for you to stand on is rickety, right? It's not even real foundation, it's imaginary.
I agree with you. When you mention the Western European model of leadership, you're talking about the Aristotle, the Socrates, and the Plato method of leadership. And that's what we're following, the Greek mythology of the Western European leadership model. Do you think it is time to have a Black leadership model, which I just defined? Do you think it's time?
Define it again for me.
Define it again?
Yes, please.
Yes, there is the Black slavery thinking process. There is the Emancipation Proclamation thinking process. There is the godly, I'm drawing the blank on the third one, but there is the current Black leadership. Black leadership is not defined. Do you think it's time for it to be civil rights leadership? That was the third one. The civil rights and the Black Panther leadership model. Do you think it's time for us to start defining Black leadership? If so, what would you think is the definition of Black leadership?
One of my mentors used to tell me that you are a leader when people follow you. So anyone can be determined a leader if they have people following them. The question is, where are you leading them to? Where are you leading them from? And what are you doing along the process as you go? I think that a combo of probably a civil rights / Black power paradigm is what's needed across the board. When you're looking for saviors, when you're looking for someone to do the work for you, then you don't build up the strength, you don't build up the inner fortitude to play your role appropriately, because you put the weight on, quote unquote, the leader versus walking with, supporting, lifting up, investing in leadership. What is an Afrocentric way of leadership is circular. A Eurocentric way of leadership is singular or linear. So there's the council of elders, and we see it represented in government today, right? So when you look at the Senate and the House of Representatives, and those are based on council type leadership styles, which are not necessarily European, but I don't even really jump into that in public forums. I think that we need to be more accountable. We need leadership to be more accountable. We as community members need to be more accountable. We need to, you talked about redefining Black culture. I didn't jump into the redefining piece because I don't buy into how others define me. That's your definition of me. What is my definition of me? Right? How do I, and what do I say are the values and principle sets that I want to protect and project? And when I step back and look at it, how are the expression or the activation of those values and principle sets, what are their outcomes? Do they lend towards life or do they lend towards death? So some agreement in around those values and principles in their expression, some ongoing modeling of that. Black banks, Black insurance firms, Black farms, all of those things are broken down because in a capital mindset, in a capitalist society, we're looking at, one, how do we compete and how do we squash individuality? And if I could buy in mass, or if I can convince you, because marketing, the invention of marketing came along with, at least commercial marketing as we know today, came along with industrialization. So how do I master the way to communicate and move people to move in ways that benefit the individual or the corporation versus ways that benefit community? So we got to get back to lifting up and protecting and projecting those values and principles that serve us well in all areas that are essential to life.
We're almost running out of time. I just want to ask you a couple more questions very quickly. How can we increase respect for the Black dollar, considering that Black consumers are the largest contributors to the economy in the world? How can we increase respect for the Black dollar? We always talk about economics. Black economics at that, but we're not talking about respecting the Black dollar.
Who do you want to respect the Black dollar? Who are we looking for respect from?
Well, you also have to look at corporations respecting the Black dollar. You have to look at ourselves individually in the Black community. Sometimes they look at spending their money, spending more for convenience than actually regarding the Black dollar. I'll give you an example. You just got off work. There's the corner store right there, but the Black store is further down. Which one you're going to go to? You're going to go to the corner store and spend your money because two things. They say Black stores are overpriced. The corner store is not. So how can we teach not only ourselves, but others to respect the Black dollar? And we're the largest consumer power in the world.
Power is the ability to impact change. The ability to determine your own outcome, your own reality. I would say we're the biggest consumers at this point, not necessarily the biggest consumer power. In order to have people respect the Black dollar, we got to first respect ourselves. Like what I said to you earlier, do we value ourselves? Who's more important, Michael Jordan or the Michael Jordan gym shoes? We, for some reason, felt that by going to buy the Michael Jordan gym shoes, that gave us value, versus modeling or mirroring the Michael Jordan work ethic, the Michael Jordan talent, the Michael Jordan mindset. Let's jump forward a little bit, the Mamba mentality. You think you can go buy the jersey and put the shoes on and be the Mamba, versus embracing the work ethic and the mentality and the value and principle set that says, I am the talent, I am what's valuable, versus what I put on me, versus what I ride in, versus what I listen to, versus who I'm hanging around with. The way that you get us to respect the Black dollar is to respect ourselves and the power that we have for ourselves and the things around us. It's the way that we think about who we are, which is impacted by how and where we live and the messages that we receive. That is what severely impacts how we spend our money. Now let's go to the corner store thing real quick. Most of the corner stores that we see do not operate on an individual level, right? I'm willing to bet that 99% of the corner stores in Black communities that are not owned by Black people, they don't operate as individual entities. They are part of buying groups. There's a consortium of people who are opening up stores all over the country and they buy together.
I'm receiving a hard rap. I'm sorry about that. Please give IntellectualRadio.com/iHeartRadio station where they can get your information from.
For Black Culture Week, go to www.blackcultureweek.com. For South Shore Works, go to go to southshoreworks.org. You can find us on social media under those same titles. And we look forward to building with you, collaborating with you, making new contributions to the culture.
Thank you so much. Love to have you back. That's going to do it for us on The Drive at 5. Thanks to Earl Winfrey, our executive producer, Wendell, who's behind the scenes. You guys have a wonderful week and happy Juneteenth.
Happy Juneteenth.